Good morning, students and faculty. Thank you so much for attending this morning to today's Leadership Forum. My name is Chris Davis. I'm one of the Quigley Ambassadors for the School of Accountancy, and it is my privilege today to introduce today's guest, Derek Theurer, Acting Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. After a brief introduction, we will have a conversation moderated by Dr. Brad Lindsay, followed by a brief Q&A with questions from the audience. Derek Theurer joined the administration in the Treasury first as a counselor for Secretary Bessent, assisting with complex global tax negotiations, as well as the enactment of President Trump's historic tax cuts through the One Big Beautiful Bill. Derek was later confirmed as the acting deputy undersecretary of the Treasury for Legislative Affairs in March of 2025. Derek brings extensive experience on the Hill, having served 4 years in the House of Representatives in a variety of capacities. He has served as Chief Tax Counsel for the House Ways and Means Committee, as Senior Policy Advisor for the Office of the Speaker, as well as Senior Tax Counsel for the Senate, helping with the design and passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Derek also has private industry experience working for ExxonMobil. Derek graduated with a bachelor's degree summa cum laude from Utah State University in accounting, later pursuing a law degree from UCLA and an LLM in taxation from NYU's School of Law. In conversation with Derek this morning, I've been really impressed with his mindset. He works with a variety of colleagues from lots of different backgrounds and from family pedigrees and from different universities. And his perspective is, you don't have to be the smartest man in the room, you just have to outwork everyone else. And he has proven that time and time again with where he is today. And so without further ado, Deputy Secretary Derek Theurer.
It was my privilege to meet Derek for the first time last April. BYU was gracious enough to invite us to their tax policy case competition. And they were such gracious hosts that our Utah State team won the competition. And Derek was, despite it being a very, very difficult and challenging time preparing for contentious confirmation hearings and so forth, Derek was happy to receive us as a host and to spend, like we were the only people on his schedule that day, a good hour with us. And so never forgot that, Derek. Doesn't surprise me you would come to Logan to make another investment in our students, and we're very, very grateful.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I only will host a group of Cougars if there is an equal number of Aggies in the room. So it was sort of a package that we put together in order to facilitate that visit.
We hope to return in late April again, and with the winning USU team again is what we expect. All right, well, you know the theme of today, building a career with intention. I think Derek's going to have a lot of great advice to share with you from his experiences over the last 20 plus years as a Utah State student and his career beyond. But in many ways, you start to fashion a career as a student, Derek. So maybe to get us started, looking back on your time at Utah State, how do you feel like you made the most of your time here and your opportunities as a student at Utah State?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so great to be here. It feels like home. The home I grew up in is actually, you can see, it's right across here over the top of the island, there on the southeast bench of Logan. And we've been in, my family, as we discussed this morning, my family's been in Cache Valley for a very long time, many generations, dating back to the 1850s. And I never thought about going to school anywhere else other than Utah State. I knew I'd be an Aggie, third generation Aggie, and really glad to have my younger brother and my older sister here. They're both Utah State grads as well. And my sister has 3 current Aggie students. So this is an important place for our family. And for me, studying here, you have the foundation to do anything that you want. The education that you will get at Utah State, particularly here in the Huntsman School, I noted this morning when I was here, it's just the College of Business. You've had an upgrade since, including the facilities. Had a great morning touring and seeing all the beautiful spaces that you have. It's truly incredible what's being built. And I think the biggest investment has been in students. And the opportunities you have, I think you will learn in the classroom. You will have that knowledge development. You will learn skills, analytical skills. You will learn research skills. You will learn writing skills. You also, particularly again with these investments that have been made in students, you'll have the opportunity to get hands-on experience. And that was really meaningful for me. I found work in accounting during my time studying accounting here for local businesses. And that was incredibly meaningful in understanding how businesses think and what it takes for businesses to succeed. That's a foundation that I've used throughout my career, both in the private sector as well as the public sector during government service. So I think this opportunity you have, this is really, as Brad said, you're setting the foundation. And I want to reiterate, I'll maybe say a couple times, but this is an incredible institution. You can compete as an Aggie with anyone that's from any school anywhere in the world. And as Chris noted in his very generous introduction, that good education plus hard work, you can chart a pretty remarkable career.
So just a quick follow-up. How do these students make sure they leverage the opportunities that are before them here at Utah State? And is there anything you would modify or tweak to your approach as a student now with the years of experience that you've
I had a great time here. I mean, I think, again, being here in the Valley, I'm able to come back. I still have family in the Valley, so enjoy Cache Valley. I've since lived many other places, but this is a beautiful place. There's a lot of outdoor and other activities that you can leverage during your time here. But nothing that I would change, but just again highlight that I try to be thoughtful about the classes I took, the direction that I would follow. Not to say that it was a single path that was predetermined, but always was thinking, what do I want to do in the medium term? What do I want next steps to look like, and what kind of vision do I have for my career? Being intentional there is important. You will have support along the way, but you have the opportunity to own your own education, to own your own career. Nobody will watch out and guard, protect, and advance that as well as you will. So just having intention, for me, it has worked out very well.
Perfect. You touched on this a bit, but let's dive in a little bit deeper. Real experience, as well as graduate work can shape a career. How have you leveraged those opportunities into what you're doing today?
Yeah, I love studying accounting. It's been great to see a couple of the professors that I had. Hard to believe, right? This has been a couple decades. I'm very old now, but some of them are still here, right? And had great opportunities to learn from them. I also, as I studied accounting, looked at potential internships doing accounting, either audit or tax, for a Big Four firm. I realized that maybe that wasn't going to be the right path for me. And so I started thinking about graduate school. I visited with a number of attorneys who did work in kind of the corporate and tax space, and realized that actually that might be an interesting path. So took the LSAT, did well enough to get into law school, and kind of put me on a slightly different path. But again, the foundation of accounting, to this day, right, the things that I learned and developed here at Utah State continue to pay dividends.
One of the things I remember distinctly from our visit to Washington, D.C., when we visited with Derek, he said, when I'm not at work, when I'm not in D.C., I just want to be another dad in the suburbs. So you're a family man, you're enjoying a successful career. How on earth do you balance all of that? That is a topic, as a teacher here at Utah State, I can say that's very much on students' minds.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate that I have great parents, right, who have been involved with Utah State for many years, great siblings, as I noted, and married, have 3 great children. And there's tension, right? If you're going to have a family, you're going to be involved in a career and a job that has some level of intensity. You're going to have to find a way to make it work. You're going to have to find a way to meet responsibilities you have at home, as well as the responsibilities you have at work, and other responsibilities you have in the community, right? Whether it's your faith or otherwise, there's going to be many demands on your time. I'd like to say, you're very busy, you're studying, you're doing all of this now. Time will not get easier in the years to come, right? You will not get less busy as the years go on. I think you will develop in your own way the ability to manage that. And I think for me, I've never really, the term work-life balance has never really resonated with me, because in a lot of ways that brings to mind sort of scales of justice, right? You've got, one side that's home life, another side that's work life, and, trying to keep constant balance between the two. For me, I think of it more in terms of work-life harmony, right? So over a longer period of time, are you, again, meeting your responsibilities? Are you accomplishing the things on both fronts that you would like to? And it means that day to day that you may have to make choices, right? I think for me, I've had family medical emergency that forced me to focus on family for a couple of months. At the same time, particularly in the last couple of years, I've had extreme intensity at work to get certain projects delivered, right? And so there's had to be a harmony between those two worlds. And I think over the medium and longer term, that's where I've been able to find that peace, right, between home and work. And it's again, focusing on the task of the moment, what's the most important, but realizing that trying to have an accounting approach to your day, right, and set aside hours, this many hours at home, this many hours at work. In a modern workplace, that's going to be very difficult to maintain. And so I think it's, again, intentionality matters. So having a plan, but also realizing some flexibility, the need to be able to be nimble, right, and respond to whatever is the most urgent thing at the moment, but not doing so for such an extended period that you're compromising your goals for both parts of your life.
Perfect. Well, given your training and your career path, you obviously must be very capable technically. But one thing we're emphasizing here in the Huntsman School is durable skills or soft skills. Do you mind speaking to how important those skills have been and where you are today and where you go from here?
Yeah, so I was different than a lot of law students. So I graduated from Utah State in 2005 and immediately went to law school. And many of my classmates in law school didn't come from technical backgrounds. Most were from soft backgrounds. So English, political science, philosophy. These were people that had done a lot of writing, right, during their college careers. I'd done some, not nearly what they had done, right? I'd had a more technical background. And so there was an adjustment for me, moving from numbers, debits, and credits, right, that we live in the accounting world, to developing a skill set that was more about communication. The experience I had in law school really sort of took that accounting background, layered these additional communication skills, and that really is what has made all the difference in my career and the opportunities that I've had, is the marriage of both, right? Being able to understand things at a very technical level, but also be able to communicate clearly, communicate concisely, taking big, technical, complicated issues and explaining them in normal human terms. There is a increasing value in that skill set to break down and explain to decision makers what the core issues are and what the core points of decision should be. I think particularly AI, right? We've seen an explosion. That's been a primary driver in the last year plus of our economy, is investments in data centers, in machine learning, and artificial intelligence. This, as you all know, I'm sure more than even I do, this is where the world, this is where work, this is where companies and even culture are headed. And there's questions that will come up, right? Will my job be replaced by a robot? There will definitely be jobs replaced by robots. What will never be replaced is the interpersonal part of the workplace. There will always be a need to communicate, right, with senior people, with decision makers, with colleagues, and developing those skills alongside technical skills, including AI and other tools that you will deploy. That's what will differentiate you. That's what will give you a competitive advantage. Especially for you all. Many of your cohort are not great at communicating, certainly not verbally. Harnessing that skill, being able to leverage that in the workplace, community, and home as well, but being able to leverage that in the workplace will make you a difference maker, will give you opportunities that other people would not otherwise have. So again, having a strong technical background that Huntsman School provides, but also developing that communication skill set that's crucial in having job security and in good and important opportunities going forward.
We learned from Chris's excellent introduction that Derek has a unique background. He's worked in the for-profit industry with ExxonMobil. He's worked for a nonprofit, the Business Roundtable, and now he's in government. And Derek, there are students among us who have interests in all those areas. So you have a unique background to help inform all of them. So what are some similarities and differences between those different opportunities that you would point out to them as they think about their options?
Yeah, I think I place a lot of value on my public service. I take it very seriously. I feel a responsibility in the jobs I've had in government to get things right, to do the work right, to provide. For the most part, I've been a staffer, right, in Washington, to provide good counsel and good analysis for a decision maker, for them to, in many cases, make a fairly weighty decision about where to go with legislation, where to go with policy. I've appreciated my time in the private sector. That allowed me to develop skills that I have deployed in the public sector. Understanding how businesses think is very valuable when you're in government. It can help you understand, because many businesses will come to Washington, they will, under the First Amendment, it's their right to come and petition their government for redress. They will come in and explain their point of view. They will share their perspective, and having the experience in the private sector has allowed me to have good intuition, good instinct, whether what the company is bringing, what this business is bringing to us as a concern is a legitimate concern, or maybe something where they're trying to squeeze a little bit more out. They're trying to get potentially a windfall for themselves. And that's experience in the for-profit, in the private sector, has been invaluable as I've gone about my public service. I think one of the challenges you always have in government service is compensation. It's something that we wrestle with recruitment, particularly in the IT space right now. IT jobs can be very lucrative, and government pay scales are restricted in many ways. And I think one of the key drivers for me in public service is that mission, right? Feeling like I'm part of something important, something that's making a difference, something that is helping other people, my children, my friends, my family, my community, and ultimately our country. So that's very helpful, feeling like I have a mission that's more than just money at this time, but that is something that has to be weighed when you're in the public sector. I'll say in the United States, we're fortunate. Many other countries don't have the same approach to civil service, but again, I've been in and out of government, and I feel like my experience has informed both. And that's a common experience, right, in Washington. I think it's value add for our country. I think having that private sector understanding applied across government is extremely valuable. The IRS, I spent yesterday morning at the IRS processing facility in Ogden. It's the largest processing facility in the country. A lot of paper tax returns get sent there for processing, and they're deploying technology. We're trying to modernize IRS systems. The line is IRS continues to be 5 years away from fully modernizing. That's been the case for the last 30 years, right? Continually, 5-year outlook. Okay, 5 years from now, we're really going to be updated and up to speed. We're going to be modernized. Obviously, in the last 30 years, the world has changed, but in the last 12 months, we've taken this very seriously and are deploying private sector solutions to the IRS process. It's incredible to see what they're doing there with digitizing records, right? Digitizing those that file tax information returns in paper, making those digital, streamlining processes. I saw how they're deploying AI to help customer service reps that are receiving calls from taxpayers. So you get a form, you don't know what it is, you get a call from IRS, your accountant tells you have a problem, you try to call the IRS, you get a customer service rep. They now will have AI tools that they will deploy to help address those questions in a timely manner. And the IRS structure, so my boss, Secretary Besson, is currently not only Secretary of the Treasury, he's also acting commissioner of the IRS. It's sort of a typical thing in the second Trump administration to have multiple jobs.
You're one of them, too.
I have 3 right now, which puts some additional constraint on my time. But as commissioner, acting commissioner, Secretary Besant, identified and hired an individual named Frank Bisignano, who has a multi-decade career experience running large financial services companies. So he was an executive at JP Morgan, he was CEO of Fiserv, and now he's at the IRS with a private sector mentality to improve their systems, to make them more efficient, and really deliver on the Secretary's priorities for the IRS, which are number one, taxpayer privacy, number two, ensuring we have the revenue that we need to run the government, and number three, customer service. So the goal is to make the IRS truly a world-class customer service entity. And again, that's only possible by deploying these private sector ideas in government and getting those efficiencies and those improvements.
It's great to hear the IRS is on the verge of moving beyond DOS programming.
That's right. That's right.
This is exciting. Another major theme in the Huntsman School is mentoring. Hopefully that's something you hear about occasionally. And so I just wanted to ask Derek, do you have a mentor or mentors who have helped you personally and professionally? How has that benefited your life? And what advice do you have for students about seeking out those types of relationships?
I've been extremely fortunate throughout my career. And looking back again, saw Frank Schumann earlier today. Frank was a great mentor when I was a student here at Utah State, and just thrilled that he is still around to continue to mentor what is an entirely new generation. So in school, you can have mentors. As I started work, I was extremely fortunate to have great colleagues who really, on an informal basis, provide mentorship. This is one of the things that makes me a real supporter of in-person work, right? Return to office has been a priority at the Treasury Department. For me personally, I've been supportive and tried to assist and promote that because of the mentorship opportunities that happen when you're in person. The one-off candid conversations, the informal engagement that you have to glean information from those that have more experience than you do has tremendous value. That allows you to skip steps during your career as you learn from others what they've already accomplished, the experience they've had. And so it's really been never at any point in my career was I part of a formal mentorship program. But I did benefit at each step from mentors. And now I'm again old, so I'm on the verge of being on the other side of this and having the opportunity to give back and provide some mentorship, I hope, to those who are on my team, those that I work with. And I think it provides a lot of value for me. I've been fortunate to be part of some significant projects, some things that are very visible in the world, which is great. At this point, where I get the most satisfaction, where I feel the happiest and most fulfilled is seeing others on my team succeed. So seeing younger staff that develop skills and then seeing them start to deliver those results for themselves. That's been tremendously gratifying. So would encourage you all, you're now on the front end of that, find mentors, right? This can be informal. Find ways to connect with them. There's, in many cases, offering something to the mentor can be helpful, right? So it's a two-way communication. And then keep in mind, as your career develops, look for opportunities to mentor others. Because again, in my experience, it's been one of the most fulfilling things I've done in my professional life.
Given Derek's background in DC as a public servant, we thought we would broaden our theme today to being an informed and intentional citizen. Right? He lives and breathes in that world. So Derek, we need informed voters in this country. Most of our students will be voting for the first or second time in the midterm elections in November. What advice do you have for our students about taking the time to really think about the right to vote, taking that seriously, and making sure they're informed on the issues of our day? Yeah,
I have a great love for our country. I feel very fortunate to have been born here and to have all the benefits that we have as Americans. That's only intensified. Right? I felt that my entire life, but that's only intensified as I've worked in government and seen government in action and seen what we can accomplish as a country, what we offer to the people, especially in comparison to the rest of the world. I've been very fortunate in the last 12 months in particular to represent our country. So Chris mentioned working through some complex global tax negotiations. I worked with G7 countries. I traveled to South Africa last spring and sat as the U.S. delegate, right, behind our flag, behind United States of America placard to represent our nation, right, represent our people, our companies, and that was a really meaningful moment for me to be able to have my work and the experience I developed used in a way to try to make America great again. And so throughout my time in DC, I've just developed an appreciation for our system of government. It's not perfect, no system is, but it tends to be very successful in doing the things that we have to do. I consistently think, where else in the world would you rather live, right? We have so many opportunities, so many fortunate circumstances. We can always improve, but being an American is a tremendous blessing for each of us. And I think as you vote, you can consider the policies that are important to you. The political world can be pretty messy these days. It can be very partisan, it can seem very divisive, but I think there are a number of core issues that unite us. And I think identifying for you what are the most important issues for federal policymakers, as Brad noted, to consider in the upcoming election, and to cast an informed vote. Local elections are also important. We cast many more votes for local leaders than we do for federal leaders, but it's those individuals who are going to make the decisions, right? They will have input from outside sources. They will have input from the private sector. They'll have input from their staff, but ultimately these people who we elect make decisions about the future of our country, the future of our economy, the future of our culture and society. So just encourage you throughout your life to continue to be an informed citizen, to go in and cast your vote, whatever your political leanings are, but focusing on those big priorities and where you would like to see the country go.
Beautiful. Well, I'm a tax professor, and I told Derek I've showed great restraint not to ask a tax question yet. But if you think about it, Derek has his fingerprints all over two massive tax bills. The TCJA, 2017, and now the One Big Beautiful Bill. And the previous bill of those magnitudes would be like 1986, right? So here you are in the middle of two massive tax bills. But what I keep hearing is we should expect another tax bill before the midterm elections. So is that your sense as well, Derek? Will we see a tax bill? And if we do, what type of tax bill could be passed by both chambers of Congress, where we're at right now as a country?
Yeah, I mean, we will always support Congress. We had a pretty busy year last year. It'd be nice to have a little bit of a break. I was in 2017, that was my first opportunity to work in government and work on that initial significant tax cuts bill. That was a great chance to see Congress in action, to see what it takes to move legislation. It's extremely difficult to move any significant bill through both chambers of Congress. Even if you do it on a single party basis, which has been done several times by each party in recent years, there are still disparate views, right, across Republican conference, across the Democrat caucus. Each side will have these diverse interests and viewpoints by their membership. And so moving legislation requires a lot of coalition building, requires a lot of education, right, about why we might pursue one policy versus another. And, so we did 2017 bill, which made significant changes on the business, the corporate side, the international side, transformational change there. Also major individual and small business tax cuts. Those, due to the nuances, will not bore you with congressional procedure, but due to nuances in the process that we used in 2017, many of those individual and small business provisions were made temporary. And so they were set to expire in 2025. And that was really the driving force behind last year's tax bill, is preventing $4 trillion plus of new tax increases on American families and American small businesses. And the conversation will continue. I think the legislative process, you always have members of Congress who are going to want to continue to refine the tax code, other parts of our federal legal system. With respect to tax, again, I don't think we left a lot on the table. We worked pretty hard last year to get this One Big Beautiful Bill done. to provide these tax cuts for working families. But the conversation certainly continues. How can we continue to optimize some of the provisions in this current bill that were made temporary? There will be discussion about extending those. On Wednesday, I was in Washington at an event rolling out Trump accounts. So this is a provision in last year's tax bill that offers $1,000 into an investment account for every baby born between 2025 and 2028, right? So during those 4 years, every baby born is eligible for this $1,000 contribution from the government into a long-term savings program, and all families have to do is go in and claim it. That's a provision that priced for these 4 years, sort of a pilot program, a test to see how this works, to see what the reception is. But I think conversations about extending those types of things will continue in the months and years ahead.
Perfect. You operate in the middle of a very divisive political environment. And Derek shared this morning in a breakfast meeting, some of that is real and some of it is political theater. But what advice do you have for our students living in a divisive world? How do you navigate that? You're in the middle of one. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so our politics in Washington are raw, right? They're very visible. You see this play out in news media, on social media. But anywhere that you work, there are going to be different viewpoints, right? You'll hear about internal politics in any large organization, for-profit or nonprofit. And that's something to be navigated. In my experience, I've had success doing two things, really. One is being technically capable, right? Being reliable, given an assignment to deliver that on time. Don't need to shoot for the stars, don't always need to be pushing out huge creative ideas, especially early in your career. Just being consistent and reliable, someone that people around you know, they come to you with a project or a question, you will get them an answer, you will get them a work product that is useful. But on this question about navigating politics, either in a private sector workspace or if you find yourself in government or politics, finding a way to disagree without being disagreeable, not gratuitously choosing fights and conflict, right? There are many people in the political world who do so. In my experience in Washington, those that do so are not well served over the long term. I have as in the course of my work, sort of been required to have differences of view from colleagues that I am working very closely with, whether it's across the aisle or in other committees, in other chambers, right, House and Senate. And for me, a guiding principle has always been to be a good guy, right? To be cordial, to be respectful, to express the point of view that I or my boss have, but again, to do so without being difficult. And going through that, having that mentality of not burning bridges, right, not picking unnecessary fights has served me very well. I think one of the things that will determine many of the opportunities you have is the reputation that you develop among your colleagues, among others in your industry. And if you have a reputation for being difficult, for being prickly, that could have an effect on what opportunities you have going forward. I told the group this morning that I've had many jobs in Washington. Not a single one of them did I apply for. They all came through informal networks. Someone who said, oh, you have a need in this space? Have you talked to Derek, right? Have you thought about having him considered for the role? And I think, again, my overall inclination, my posture of trying to work well with people, even when there's disagreement, again, has served me really well.
Derek, there are some students among us who'd be very interested in seeking out an internship or even full-time work for a branch of government. I realize that isn't exactly your story, but it's kind of happening around you all the time. So what advice, how on earth do you make your way into that network and those opportunities, and who tends to pull it off successfully?
Yeah, so I came to Washington and into government in particular, sort of a mid-career stage, right? Many of my colleagues and friends in Washington started jobs as interns, right? So they started from the ground up in their jobs in DC. And my path was to come in later, right? After about a decade of experience, to come in as a subject matter expert and to work as a congressional staffer. I think the being in Washington, right, there are many opportunities. The political landscape changes over time. If you have a new administration, that party will have hundreds, thousands of jobs that need to be filled in that administration. So in the last 12 months, there's been a lot of change among staff in Washington given a new administration. That will happen potentially every 4 years to have that turnover. So there are opportunities there, but it requires some presence in Washington in many cases. And again, the informal networks, right? I've never done networking per se, right? Networking events, that's just never been something that's appealed to me. I don't think it's something I'd be particularly good at, but I think having a track record of success, having a track record of, again, being reliable, dependable, consistent, and also being a good teammate, that has created these opportunities through the informal network. So I think I'm certainly glad to connect with those interested in coming to Washington. As Brad noted, we have student groups that come through on a regular basis. I love seeing them and letting them have a chance to visit with policymakers and staff in Washington to see what happens there. It's an exciting place. It can be a great place to work. Things move very quickly in Washington. It's very dynamic. Things that you work on will regularly be front page news. They're some of the biggest issues in the planet that have to be addressed by our federal government. And I think on the front end, being physically present there and building that network are probably the two biggest things you can do.
I'd love to add one final question, and then we'll go into Q&A if we have a few minutes. Based on something Derek said this morning, I think we could all benefit from you elaborating a little bit on this. Derek shared this morning to a few of our students that in a world that is distracted, if you are able to focus, right, work hard and be efficient, that will be a huge competitive advantage for you. And he also kind of tied that to the Aggie brand. That's kind of who we are. So do you mind just sharing a few thoughts on that? How, based on what you're seeing and who you're working with, how is that a huge competitive advantage?
Yeah, for sure. So you're an Aggie, right? The Utah State Agricultural College, these are our roots. We're rooted in hard work here in Cache Valley. And whether you are a Cache Valley native or we've now adopted you, you have the opportunity to participate in that same legacy. I've never been the smartest person in the room, in any room that I've been in, but I know that I can work and outwork anyone that is around, and that's been something that I've tried to focus on having. And it's not just about hours that you work, right? It's about having focused work. And again, for your cohort, this is a distracted world. You grew up in a different world than I did, and you have the opportunity to distinguish yourselves with an ability to focus on tasks for a significant period of time. There will come times, intense jobs, intense projects, intense deals that you'll work on where you will need to sit down and hammer things out, right? Hammer to anvil for hours on end. Your ability to do that will if you're able to do that, you will be a difference maker. You will be someone that people want on project teams. They will want you as part of the system and part of what they're trying to accomplish. So I think having the technical background right, having the soft skills, and then just being willing to, in these kind of medium-term bursts, do a lot of focused work, that is something that for you in particular can really set you apart.
Excellent. Well, I think Derek's given a lot of great advice, and hopefully that's prompted some questions that you might have. So I think we've got some microphones, and we'll open it up for some Q&A in the audience.
Yes, if you could please raise your hand and then state your name, where you are in school, and then your question, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Porter, economics major. I'm probably a junior. You earlier talked about this idea of communication skills and these soft skills. Here at the Huntsman Business School, I think we all agree that we develop really powerful hard skills like accounting, economics, finance. You're able to do really powerful things. And in some ways we're geared towards soft skills and communication because we have events like these, and I think it's really helpful. But like in the class, I don't think we're getting as much of that. How do you recommend developing those soft skills and those communication skills, especially within a world that we like to communicate through a screen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was sort of forced to, right, with this legal training that forces you to communicate both in writing and verbally, to be very disciplined. I'm not recommending law school to everyone. If you want to be in the legal profession, glad to have, speak with you about that. It can be great, and the training is incredible you receive. But I think more than anything, and I've worked with colleagues and friends in Washington on this as they develop in their careers, you have to focus on it. You have to think about it. You have to be intentional. You got to study it like you do other things. Studying things like writing, studying things like communication, influence, and persuasion. These are real skills. Some people are born with these, just like any skill. Most people develop them over time. So it's studying and then deploying. With writing, it happens on a screen, but disciplined writing can be extremely valuable and productive in today's workplace. Again, the idea of taking big complex concepts, complicated issues and situations, distilling them down to very clear decision points, that is something that will continue to be very valuable. And that requires, again, discipline in writing. I think my coworkers probably don't appreciate how many times I review things that I write, especially if it's going to go to a principal. So when I work for Speaker Johnson, go to him. It's going to go to Secretary Bessent. I pore over every word because every word can matter, right? And their opportunity to spend time on an issue, as you look at these senior leadership jobs, their time is extremely constrained. And so they need to have those very clear and concise descriptions of an issue. And so it takes practice, it takes intentionality. But again, I think disciplined, clear communication and writing is a great place to start. And verbal communication, this is something I started at a very low place from. I used to be terrified of public speaking when I was young, right, in grade school. This was like, I was horrified by it, right? I was extremely fearful. I would be in tears, right, when I had to be in front of a microphone. And it's something that I really had to take seriously and work on. I had great friends, mentors, and then opportunities to speak with people and develop the skill. I studied it as well, and it was one of the things I realized when I was sitting before, as Brad noted last year, sitting before the Senate Finance Committee, more than 20 senators who are there to grill these nominees for positions on any question that they want, right? Like there's no limitation on what they can ask. And I remember sitting there and feeling really grateful for what I'd learned with this specific skill set, right? To be able to speak clearly, speak without the fear, and it took time, right? It took a lot of practice. But for me, right, I'm an example, a model of even starting from a very low bar, you can become at least a decent communicator.
These questions are for Derek, but I'm just going to add, you need to participate in the tax policy case competition, which kicks off Wednesday at 4:30.
I'm going to stand, Derek. My name's Connor. I'm an econ and political science major. These fine gentlemen in front of me told me that you were missing political science majors this morning. My question is a little bit loose, but speaking to building your career with intention, I'm curious what your reputation was either in school, both here and law school, as well as early in your career, and how that served you or how it didn't. There you go.
Yeah, I think one of the things you realize early on in a career is that in many cases you're going to be a small fish in a very big pond, right? And to be honest, a lot of people are not going to think a lot about you any of the time, right? They have their own challenges, concerns. They're going to be worried about themselves, their work. And so I think, as I described, the ability to be diligent, competent, reliable, and then a good teammate, those are things that will be observed over time. I think the hard work piece is something that people have pointed out to me. It's something that I grew up with, right? So it's not something that I was particularly intentional about, but I do think about it, right? I do think about making sure that if I'm in an environment communicating that people feel heard, right? Making sure that people, the spaces that I'm in, that people have a degree of comfort, and also, within a team, pushing for excellence, right? I think that if you're going to do something, you should do it well, and so having that inclination of always trying to improve, I think is something that I've carried since I was here throughout my career.
Thank you.
Hi, Derek. My name's Tavo Estrada. I emailed you a couple of weeks ago, and I'm a senior. My last semester here, double majoring in marketing and data analytics. And you mentioned a little bit about developing the skill of influence. And I'm co-president of our pro sales program, so I care a lot about influence, especially in the context of sales. But I think sales is a skill that applies to anything. So can you just talk to us a little bit about how you've developed the skill of influence and what some of those qualities are that we should focus on?
Yeah, I'm not a natural salesman, right? And I am envious of those who are. But yeah, I think there's plenty of materials today, particularly when you add in YouTube, right? Influence and persuasion. There are books written about these. I think that's study, but then deploying the skills, right? So I can think about job interviews I've had, right, where I had these concepts about that you learn through these written materials or through YouTube videos about how to connect with someone, right, and how to connect quickly. Those are things I've deployed in job interviews, and they work, right? So I think it's, again, I think we've talked about before, studying the skill, right, getting some baseline, and then practicing. You have to deploy it. And particularly things like communication, influence, persuasion, these are things that require human connection. So you have to find opportunities. I think the Huntsman School provides lots of opportunities to do so now. I think being in the workplace, right, either internships or full or part-time work while you're in school can give you those opportunities. And again, it's a matter of focus. Leadership's another one that increasingly it's something I've needed to focus on, to again study leadership skills and practices and then deploy those. But I think the model is the same. It's study, prepare, learn, and then you have to get with these interpersonal traits that you're developing in your professional and personal life. You're only going to improve those by actually practicing, by actually having that human-to-human engagement.
Thank you very much.
Derek shared this morning there's 80,000 professionals at the Treasury. So yeah, I think you need to figure out leadership because there's a lot of people who need you to lead them right now.
Yes.
I saw a question over here, Chris. Yes.
My name is Payson Morgan. I'm an econ major. I'm a senior, and I have an interest in going to law school. I guess this is more of a specific question about your role at the Treasury. When have you found that policy or legal constraints obstruct what you see as clear economics, a way to pursue worthy goals, but you're blocked by some sort of red tape?
Yeah, so I think red tape generally is a challenge in any big organization. As far as legal constraints and economic concepts, I'm fortunate that while, as Brad noted, there are many people now downstream of my current role that I have responsibility to help manage along with the secretary. I'm not expected to come up with a lot of new policy ideas. The policy ideas are there. I'm really in a project management, project execution job. And so I think for me, it's been a great opportunity to deploy all these accumulated skills, right? Technical, interpersonal, soft skills, the persuasion and influence, and then increasingly leadership skills. The creativity I think is welcome in jobs, especially as you grow in your career, right? I think early in my career, I was really observing others and those that had a lot of experience to see how they approached issues, how they approached problems, how they communicated and led others. And as time has gone on, I've developed my own skills and experience, have looked to deploy that as well. So I think to the question about constraints, we live in a land of laws, and it's crucial that we stay within those bounds. At the Treasury Department specifically, we have the Office of General Counsel. We have some of the best attorneys in the world, right, who provide sound legal counsel to everyone in the building. And that's the case in every agency. That's the case on Capitol Hill as well. There will be attorneys who that's their job, right, is to help the decision makers understand the legal frameworks. But again, legal education can be great. I think it forces you to develop a number of skills that certainly for me I didn't have, but that are extremely valuable.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Hi, my name is Emily White. I'm a marketing major and I'm a sophomore. And you've talked a lot about being focused. So I'm wondering, what are some things that you do to strengthen your focus, and what are some things that threaten it, and how do you manage those?
Great question. I've used different things over time. I think, again, practice makes perfect on focus. So finding blocks of time to have that narrow sort of single-minded effort in preparing for the LSAT, for example, right? So this is something that it's still a big deal, but at the time when I took it, it's sort of like you have one shot to get this right. And I knew that it wasn't squarely in my skill set, right, as an accounting major. I spent a lot of time taking practice LSAT exams. I did multiple full-length exams just to sit there. The goal was to feel very comfortable in that environment when I sat down for the actual test. Like, I've done this a bunch of times. This is just another one of those. And so I think that practice allowed me to have that focus. In the workplace, there are times where I'm mostly like an open door person, right? Like, people come and go, especially my current job. It's kind of consistently, people are coming in with questions or input to help advance things that we're working on. Occasionally, you just have to close the door and just let people know you need to have some focus time. Music on repeat sometimes when I really, really have to focus. I have like a small playlist of songs I'll just like put on repeat and just zone out, focus, get the task done. But yeah, so I think there's ways that you can develop it, practice again, but figure out what works for you. Studying for exams here is a great chance, right, to deploy those skills and continue to develop them.
I even think staying locked in for a 75-minute class, like you probably should crawl out. You're so exhausted from being so focused. That's a simple way with time you're already spending to really enhance the skill. But I think Tanya has one final question for us.
Hi, my name is still Porter, still an economics major, and I'm still maybe a junior. You have a unique background. Most people in your field, kind of like we talked about, they got an internship, they went from the ground up, they specialized in public work. And you, on the other hand, you have this more diverse background, and you come from a different point of view. Talking to a lot of people who are in careers, they talk about how specialization is important. You want to separate yourself. Hearing you speak, it sounds a little bit more like you want to diversify yourself and have these different backgrounds and how that's helped you specifically. I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on that in like pursuing maybe double majors, minors, or like where you want to go with the career to build that foundation. Is it a better idea to consider specializing in something to really set yourself apart, or diversifying and having more broad skills?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's different version of this that can work. And I think for me, I've over time become more of a generalist. I mean, what I do at the Treasury Department is on day to day, not much of it is squarely focused on the accounting concepts I learned here at the Huntsman School. But again, having that technical background, being able to do that analysis, being able to understand finance and economics, right, through my education here has been really meaningful. I would maybe think of it in terms of, we've talked about this a little bit, layering skill sets and talents on top of one another. That's how you become unique, and that's how you become, I think, can put yourself in position for opportunities and success. So I think for many people, having something technical, again, we talked about focus, right? Developing these technical skill sets can require a lot of focus. And so I think that just the technical learning and knowledge will sort of force you to develop that focus skill set. But then you're layering other things on top, whether it's sales, right? Whether it is politics, whether it is communication, specific communication. I think, for me, I'm amazed to see what digital communicators do today. Pretty remarkable what is produced on social media. There's a reason why we're all addicted to screens, because the people who are really, really good at this stuff are producing content that we want to consume. And so I think layering all these different skills on one another, that's where you get to a point where you truly become unique. So for me, my training, and when I came out of law school, I was a tax lawyer. I don't know how good of a tax lawyer I was. You line up everyone. I don't know where I fall on that bell curve, probably somewhere around the middle. But when I was on Capitol Hill, having tax as a staffer, having knowledge of the tax law is important, but that's not everything, right? You also need to be able to communicate really well, because you're working with members of Congress who are not tax lawyers. They may not have much background in finance, economics, business at all, right? There's a number of medical doctors in Congress. Those are people that also have to understand and cast votes on complex tax policy. So got to be able to communicate, and then having some political instinct and understanding, right? So on any one of those concepts, I'm not world class. Layering those three things together, where I'm arguably pretty good at each, that's where I have a skill set that can be very useful, right, in that context. So I think this can all align with what your interests are and what your inherent skills are, but maybe think in terms of how do you layer these different aptitudes and these different knowledge bases in order to position yourself where everyone is going to want you to be a part of what they're doing.
Perfect, Derek. Thank you so much for your comments and your responses. This has been such an informative discussion with both you, Dr. Lindsay, as well as us as students. I can speak for myself that I have learned a lot in how to be more effective in my communication, as well as just to be more driven towards my goal and being effective as well as an authentic leader. That's something that you've emphasized a lot, in that you have weaknesses as well, but being able to employ those around you to lift you as well as those around you up. So thank you so much. And on behalf of the Huntsman School of Business, we would like to present to you a gift. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a few memorability that you can take with you to DC. And could everyone please join with another round of applause for Derek Theurer?